Hi, and welcome to week 1 of the Coping with Worry and Anxiety CBT course. My name is Julie, and I'll be guiding you through this course. This course has been adapted from our CBT Coping with Worry and Anxiety group, which is run in the south of Glasgow. If you're new to the Worry and Anxiety course, I suggest you follow these modules once a week, starting from week 1 through to week 6. You can always listen to specific sessions at a later date if you think this would be helpful. You may also find it helpful to take some notes, so I suggest you find a pen and paper before you continue. This is a 6-week psychoeducational course based on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT. The aim of this course is to help you overcome excessive worry and anxiety. The aims of this course is for you to gain a better understanding of worry and anxiety and how this affects the way we think, feel, and behave, and for you to learn the skills to control your worries and manage your anxiety. What can you expect from the course? Well, you might have heard about CBT. The C stands for cognitions, which are our thoughts. The B stands for behaviors. CBT is a type of talking therapy which looks at the relationship between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Although we will discuss some of the causes of anxiety and worry today, this is not what we will be focusing on during this course. This is because CBT does not focus on the past. Instead, we focus on the here and now and what might be maintaining the problem. For example, what made you anxious this week? I will suggest that you put things into practice between sessions by trying out some of the things we discuss. We call this homework. It's important to make time for this because this is where we learn and become skilled at CBT. In the beginning of each session, we'll spend a bit of time reviewing your homework, and I'll ask you some questions that you might find helpful to think about. This is what the course will focus on over the next 6 sessions. Today, we will look at understanding worry and anxiety. In session 2, the aim is for you to reduce the physical symptoms of anxiety using a range of relaxation techniques. In session 3, we'll talk about problem solving and challenging our worrying thoughts. In session 4, we'll discuss beliefs about worry. In session 5, we'll talk about how to deal with uncertainty. And in session 6, we will look at how to take things forward after the course. Today, our main focus will be to look at the link between our worrying thoughts and our feelings of anxiety. We will also aim for you to gain an understanding of why you become anxious and why you might worry, and help you make links between the way you think, feel, and behave. First, let's take a look at what a worry is. Worry is a thought process. Our thoughts are what goes through our mind. These can be words or images, and they can feel very real. Worry is concerned about future events, especially where the outcome is uncertain. For example, worrying about an upcoming meeting. Worry can also be related to past events, but when it does, the worry will mostly be about the future implications, and the future outcomes that are being thought about are negative. For example, worrying about whether we offended a friend yesterday on the phone and if it will be awkward the next time we speak. Anxiety is an emotion or feeling. It is an emotional response to the worry that goes through our mind. Feelings of anxiety can be accompanied by strong physical sensations such as muscle tension, stomach churning, restlessness, disturbed sleep, and difficulties concentrating. Let's look at an example. I am anxious, that's the feeling, due to worrying that I can't find the place where I'm going, that's a thought, and my stomach is in knots, the physical symptoms. We will look at the physical symptoms of anxiety a little bit today and in greater detail next week. In addition to anxiety, other feelings that can accompany worries can be feelings of panicky, irritable, insecure, sad, and little motivation. Take a moment to think about what you tend to worry about and what are your emotional and physical symptoms in response to worrying. If you find it helpful, you can write it down. We all get worried at times, and this is a normal reaction to stressful events. For most people, worrying is usually short-lived, and it stops once the stressful situation has passed. So when does worry and anxiety become a problem? Worrying becomes a problem when you feel in a constant state of anxiety, when you worry most of the time about things that others might see as insignificant. If you always are able to find something to worry about, even if there's no event or situation to be concerned about. If you experience physical symptoms of anxiety, if worrying stops you from doing the things you want to do, or if you feel like you can't stop worrying no matter how hard you try, or if you think that the worry will never stop. If you're unsure whether you have a problem with worry and anxiety, you can ask yourself the following. Does anyone ever tell you that you worry too much, to stop worrying, fussing, procrastinating, or to slow down? Do minor issues spiral into bigger concerns? If there isn't anything to worry about, do you still find something? Do you feel like you can't stop worrying? Is worrying stopping you from enjoying things in life? Generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, is the medical term used to describe anxiety when the main symptom is worrying about different events and activities. The symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder are excessive anxiety and worrying for more days than not about a number of events or activities for at least 6 months. Worrying that feels difficult to control, which is accompanied by at least 3 of these symptoms: muscle tension, restlessness, easily fatigued, irritable, a disturbed sleep, or problems concentrating. There is also other types of anxiety disorder which are specific to certain situations or events, for example, health anxiety or phobias. Generalized anxiety disorder is the most frequent anxiety disorder and the second most frequent mental health disorder after depression. It is estimated that around 2 to 4 people of the population meets the criteria for generalized anxiety disorder each year. So why me? Anxiety is a common emotion which affects all of us from time to time. Worry and anxiety has many causes. We know that there's a role of nature and nurture in the development of anxiety. This is our genetics and our environment that we've been brought up in. You may also feel that you are a born worrier. Your family may have tended to worry a lot, and you may have learned to worry this way. Some people also have difficult events to deal with as a child or later on in life that make them vulnerable to worry and anxiety. For most people, worry and anxiety develop over a long period of time from lots of little problems and events. A buildup of stress and strains can also trigger anxiety, particularly if you're physically run down or not eating or sleeping properly. It's also common that a specific stressful life event, such as financial worries, loss of a loved one, stress at work, physical health problems, or even going on holiday, can cause worry and anxiety to develop. We know that people experience different types of worries when they suffer from anxiety, and we're going to look at how to manage these over the coming sessions. These are the different types of worry. Type 1 worries are current issues or problems that exist. For example, having no money to pay a bill. Type 2 are potential or hypothetical situations. That often starts with what if. It's about things that haven't happened yet and they might never happen. For example, a plane crash when going on holiday or our internet stopped working during a meeting. Type 3 is when you're worried about worrying. For example, worrying is going to make me ill. Everyone differs in terms of how their worry present. Some people find that they have recurring themes they worry about, such as health, finances, jobs, relationships, or their family. The worry cycle and what keeps it going. Usually something starts off as an initial worry. This can be an event, a memory, or something we see on the news. We then have what if questions that leads to a chain of more worries. If the outcome is uncertain and imagined as negative, then we might start to experience feelings of anxiety. Worry can last for minutes or hours, and it can be very tiresome and exhausting. This is the CBT vicious cycle of worry. This diagram shows us that the way we think about a situation and worry about it will affect how we feel physically in our body and emotionally, our feelings, and change what we do, our behaviors. You can see from the arrows that these are all interlinked, and changes in one lead to changes in another. These are all part of maintaining our worries and anxiety. Let's look at Cameron's example together. Cameron is at work. When he finishes the task he's working on, his boss says, "That's fine, Cameron, but can you try and do it a bit quicker next time?" Walking away, Cameron starts to feel his muscles tensing and he goes bright red. He thinks, "Was that slow? Why am I so rubbish at this? Why can't I get it right?" He starts to worry that he will get fired and then his family will get into debt. He can't stop worrying about it and he develops a headache. He starts making mistakes at his job, and by the end of the day, he's still tense and he started to feel sick as well. Let's look at Cameron's vicious cycle of anxiety and worry. In this example, we can see that it affects him in many ways. It affects his thinking in that he starts to think, "Was that slow? Why am I so rubbish at this? Why can't I get it right? What if I get fired and my family will get into debt?" He becomes anxious and embarrassed. That's his feelings. His body tenses up, he gets a headache, and he feels sick. His behavior also changes as he starts to make mistakes, and this affects his performance at work. If we learn to identify and recognize our triggers and what keeps our vicious cycle going, our thoughts, body, and behavior, we can start to make changes. By doing so, we can hopefully begin to weaken the vicious cycle, and we might start to feel better. Keeping an anxiety diary can be helpful in the beginning when we're trying to recognize our triggers and patterns in our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors when we feel anxious. Try to draw out your own vicious cycle. Think back to something you worried about over the past week. What was the trigger? What did you think? So, what was going through your mind? How did you feel physically in your body? How did you feel in yourself, your emotions? And how did you respond? It's not just what we think, but also the way we think that keeps worrying going. It's the process of worrying. For example, predicting the worst outcome in situations, coming to the class, I won't find it, I'll be taken off the list and I will never be allowed back in. Overestimating the risk of something bad happening and underestimating our ability to cope. 99% of this will go wrong and I will not be able to deal with it. Positive and negative beliefs about worry. Worrying is going to help me find answers, or worrying is going to make me ill. Difficulties tolerating uncertainty. For example, I can't stand having to wait until next week to know the outcome. And finally, avoidance. Emotional, cognitive, or behavioral. I'm going to block it out of my mind by keeping myself busy, or I just won't go. We're going to look at these issues in more detail over the next sessions. Look at your vicious cycle and think about whether any of the following applied. Did you make any negative predictions? Did you have any unhelpful beliefs about worry? Did you have difficulties tolerating uncertainty? Or is there anything you avoided emotionally, cognitively, or behaviorally? It's hard to change the way we feel, right? We know that if we work on changing the way we think, behave, and what's going on in our body, this can lead to positive changes in how we feel. Unless we learn how to break our vicious cycle, this becomes bigger and bigger. Today we've spoken about worry and anxiety and that these are normal processes. We've spoken about that these become a problem when they are excessive and when we worry about a number of different things and when we feel we have no control over our worries. We have also spoken about how our altered thinking patterns can keep worrying going, such as making negative predictions, overestimating the risk, and difficulties tolerating uncertainty. Good news is there are things we can do to reduce our worry and anxiety, and we're going to look at these closer over the next sessions. The first step you can take in getting started on tackling your worry and anxiety is to pay attention to and make a note of the things you worry about and your negative predictions. Going back to basics and writing things down is a good first step in learning to manage our worries, and a worry diary might be helpful with this. When you notice a worry, make a note of this. When you know the outcome, write down what happened and how well you coped. You might find it helpful to look at the example here and use this as a template for your own. The worry topic is Skype meeting with my boss. The specific feared outcome is, what if my technology fails and my boss becomes annoyed with me during our meeting? The actual outcome was that my internet did cut out for a moment, but when I reconnected, my boss didn't seem to mind. In terms of how I coped, I was flustered and anxious at first, but I managed anyway and the meeting went fine. Thank you for taking time to watch week 1 of the Worry and Anxiety course. I hope it's been helpful. In the next session, we're going to talk about how to reduce the physical symptoms of anxiety.